Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a truly unsettling cold case. It started as what looked like a simple missing persons report, but things got very complicated, very disturbing, really fast.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking about Aline Gowan, a 60-year-old woman. She was last seen leaving her job, briefcase in hand, back on February 13th, 2023.
And initially, the police, they sort of jumped to one conclusion, didn't they?
They did. They suspected a deadly love triangle. You had two men in her life at that point, her ex-boyfriend, Sam Brammer, and this new friend she just moved in with, Mike Brockman.
But as we often find in these cases, the real story turned out to be, well, far more complex, and honestly, even more disturbing than anyone probably imagined at first.
Absolutely.
So our mission here today is to really piece this narrative together. We're going through, police interrogations, family accounts, some really chilling CCTV footage, and some surprising discoveries later on.
Yeah, we want to pull out those crucial bits of truth from, frankly, a whole stack of sources that eventually revealed this, calculated web of lies and a really desperate cover-up.
So let's get into it. Let's unpack what happened to Aline Gowan.
Okay.
So the mystery starts with Aline leaving her job in Sugar's Diner, February 13th. What were those first things that immediately made investigators think, hang on, something's not right here?
Well, right off the bat, the biggest thing was who picked her up. She'd told her daughter, she'd told her boss, Megan, oh, a coworker is giving me a ride.
Okay.
But then surveillance footage later showed, nope, it was her ex, Sam Brammer, who actually showed up. That's a pretty big inconsistency right there.
Yeah, that's definitely strange. And then there was that text message her boss got.
Right, that text to Megan saying, leave me alone, I'm done, which was just highly uncharacteristic for Aline. Everyone said she hardly ever texted. She was super responsible.
So not her style at all.
Not at all. So for her boss to get this blunt, dismissive message, it immediately screamed red flag to the investigators. Like maybe someone else sent it.
Okay, so you've got the weird pickup, the strange text. The focus pretty quickly shifts to these two men, right?
Yeah.
Sam Brammer, the ex, and Mike Brockman, the friend she just moved in with maybe a week before after splitting with Sam.
Exactly. And complicating things even more, Eline's family, they went to the police almost immediately and said they believed Mike Brockman had likely assaulted her the night before she disappeared.
Wow, okay, so suspicion on both men right from the get-go. That must have made things tricky.
Absolutely. You've got potential motives, conflicting stories. It puts investigators in a tough spot trying to figure out who's telling the truth.
So with suspicion pointing in two directions, where did the detectives start their interviews? Did they go to Mike first?
They did, yeah. They started with Mike Brockman. And his story was, okay, Eileen, who worked at Sugar's, came to stay with him for a few days because she'd gotten, quote, kicked out, presumably from Sam's place. He said she later told him she was actually getting back together with Sam. But then, apparently, she called Mike prying, saying they'd had a fight and could she come back to his place. Mike claimed he just dropped her off at work that Monday morning, the day she vanished, and hadn't seen her since then. That was his account.
And what about their relationship? Did he say anything about, the love triangle idea? Was it romantic?
No, he was very clear on that. He explicitly denied any kind of sexual relationship with Eileen. He insisted, she stayed in a totally separate room.
But didn't detectives hear something different from Eileen's friends?
They did. That's where it gets murky.
Yeah.
Detectives confronted Mike because they'd heard from Eileen's friends that Eileen had apparently told them Mike had supposedly laid down on her bed with her and spooned her from behind.
And Mike's reaction?
Flat denial. He completely rejected those allegations when the police put it to him.
So you got these, rumors, really, from friends. Concerning, definitely, but maybe not enough for police to act on without more proof.
Right. At that stage, it was hearsay. Concerning kept him on the radar as a potential suspect, but they didn't have hard evidence to push that specific angle further, so their focus had to shift.
And it shifted pretty firmly onto Sam Brammer, the ex-boyfriend. Tell us about his first interview. There was something immediately unsettling there, wasn't there?
Oh, absolutely. This was less than 48 hours after Eileen went missing. And Sam makes this incredibly disturbing comment. He says to the detective something like, you said that I was the last person to seen her alive.
Wait, seen her alive?
Exactly. The detective had never said Eileen was dead. He'd only said Sam was potentially the last person to see her. Using the phrase seen her alive that early on, that's a massive red flag for investigators. It suggests knowledge that she's no longer alive.
Wow. Yeah, that's chilling. So, okay, besides that major slip-up, what was Sam's actual story about that day, February 13th?
His initial timeline was this. He claimed Eileen texted him asking for a ride because supposedly a friend of hers had run out of gas. He said he picked her up, drove her over to Mike Brockman's house so she could get her belongings, and then he just left. Watched her walk towards Mike's house and drove away. That was his version.
And he had texts to back this up, didn't he? Or at least texts he claimed were from Eileen.
He did. He provided texts to the police, supposedly from Aileen. Things like, please talk to M if I can come back home. He outed me last night, Sam. I love you. I promise I'll quit drinking. Please give me another chance.
Implying something happened with Mike.
Right. And another one. I'm hanging out with a friend. I will get a hold of you later. I'm not going to work. Now, if you just looked at those texts and you factored in the family's allegations against Mike.
It could look like she just decided to take off, maybe. Especially if Sam wouldn't take her back.
Exactly. It paints a picture of someone potentially fleeing a traumatic life, as the investigators put it. So, on the surface, Sam's story, backed by those texts, it seemed, plausible-ish.
But plausibility often crumbles under scrutiny, especially when technology gets involved. What was the key tool detectives used to check Sam's story?
Surveillance footage. CCTV. This became absolutely critical. Detectives didn't just take Sam's word for it, especially after that "seen her alive" comment. They went out and diligently gathered footage from businesses, traffic cams, you name it, all around town.
Trying to build a true picture of his movements.
Precisely. They wanted to create a complete timeline to see if it matched what Sam claimed. And this is where you really see the power of modern surveillance. Even bits and pieces of footage can create this digital trail that's incredibly hard to lie about convincingly.
Okay, so get ready for this comparison. What did the CCTV actually show happened on February 13th versus Sam's story?
It completely dismantled his alibi. Here's the real timeline from the cameras. 8:30 a.m., Eileen is seen waiting for Sam outside Sugar's diner. Apparently trying to be discreet, didn't want people knowing they were back together.
Okay.
Their first stop, not Mike's house. It was Eileen's mother's apartment over at Dudley Courts. And there, Eileen picked up a safe.
A safe? Containing what?
Containing $1,200 in cash. Her plan, it seems, was to use that money for a down payment on an apartment.
All right, so a significant amount of money is now involved. Where did they go after her mother's place?
Around 9:30 a.m., they drove to the Sherwood apartment complex, likely to try and get that apartment. But turns out the office was closed.
Okay, so dead end there. What next? This is where Sam claimed he drove her to Mike's, right?
This is where his story completely falls apart. From about 9:45 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., the CCTV catches Sam's truck driving. Well, basically all across town, going in multiple circles, even a quick stop at Burger King.
Burger King, not Mike's house.
Not even close. Crucially, the footage proved he never drove Eileen to Mike Brockman's house. He was consistently seen driving in the opposite direction to Mike's house the entire morning.
Wow. Okay, so his whole story about dropping her off was just fabricated. What happened after 10:30 a.m.?
This is the really alarming part. From 10:30 a.m. until about 1:00 p.m., so 2.5 hours, Sam's truck just disappears. It goes off the grid. No CCTV cameras anywhere capture its location during that window.
2.5 hours unaccounted for.
Exactly. Then, around 1:00 p.m., his truck reappears on camera feeds, making its way back towards his own home. But here's the key thing.
Eileen wasn't with him anymore.
Eileen was no longer with Sam. The camera showed him alone in the truck, completely contradicting his story of dropping her off at Mike's earlier that morning.
So, armed with this, undeniable video proof, detectives bring Sam back in. How did that second interview go?
They confronted him directly, laid out the CCTV evidence. Sam, your truck was here at 36th and Broadway at 9:28 a.m., going west towards 480, nowhere near Mike's. They showed him the proof.
And his reaction? Did he finally crack?
Nope. He would not admit to anything, just flat out rejected the evidence, stubbornly stuck to his story that he went straight home after supposedly dropping her off. It was just denial, 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 even staring proof in the face.
Incredible. So while Sam's digging himself deeper, what about Mike Brockman? Was his alibi checked?
Yes, and this was crucial. Detectives confirmed Mike Brockman's alibi was solid. He was provably at work all day in Omaha, Nebraska, nowhere near Sugar's diner or any of the locations Sam's truck was spotted.
So that definitively clears Mike.
Pretty much. It took him completely out of the equation as far as the events of that morning went and put the spotlight squarely, intensely on Sam Brammer.
And Sam's behavior after this point just gets more and more desperate, right? Started with a confrontation with Eileen's son.
Yeah, things really escalate. Eileen's son, Jack, he goes right up to Sam's door, knocks, Sam answers, and Jack asks him straight up, "What the hell did you do to my mom?"
Intense. How did Sam react?
Jack said Sam just stared at him, completely panicked, looking as if he had seen a ghost, and then just slammed the door in his face. Not exactly the reaction of an innocent person.
No kidding. And then there was that deeply disturbing comment he made to his own granddaughter.
Right. Later that same day, he tells his granddaughter, Emily, that he was going to harm himself so that he could go visit her deceased grandmother.
Implying Aileen was dead again.
Exactly. And this really shocked Emily because as far as she knew, Aileen was still just missing. So she did the right thing. She called 911 immediately.
Did the police find him?
They did. They found him drunk at a local bar. He admitted to them, yeah, Aileen broke up with him, moved in with Mike, and he repeated the claim that Mike tried to mess with her. But he denied making the suicide comments to Emily, even though she'd reported it.
So more denial. What happened then?
Because of the suicide threat reported by Emily, they placed him in a psychiatric facility on a hold just for 2 days.
Okay, but then he gets out and things go completely off the rails. What happened at Walmart?
This is just wild. He's released, and soon after, an off-duty police officer spots him at a Walmart. The officer goes to approach him, and Sam just slammed on the pedal, nearly hitting the officer.
What?
Yeah, floors his truck, flies out of the parking lot, flying past pedestrians, starts this high-speed chase, hitting speeds over 100-mile-an-hour. They eventually had to call off the chase because it was just too dangerous. And the craziest part, after all that, Sam just drove back to his apartment like nothing happened.
The sheer audacity. It really suggests someone desperate, trying to evade something much bigger than just talking to an officer.
Absolutely. It screams guilt and panic.
He did eventually turn himself in for the chase, right?
Hmm.
But then came another really crucial piece of evidence, the money.
He did. He turned himself in the next morning for the eluding and reckless driving charges. Emily bailed him out. And then, very shortly after getting out, he goes to his bank and deposits $1,200 in cash.
$1,200. That sounds familiar.
It was the exact amount that was in Aileen's safe. The safe she retrieved from her mother's house on the morning she disappeared. It's a direct financial link.
That's incredibly incriminating. And if that wasn't enough, what did he do with the truck, the vehicle involved in the disappearance and the chase?
This is probably the most damning action of all. He drove that truck, the key piece of evidence potentially containing forensic traces, straight to a scrapyard.
Yeah.
And he didn't just scrap it, he specifically requested they fully dispose of it, crushing it to pieces and even shredding it after. And he stayed there watching the entire hour-long process to make absolutely sure it was destroyed beyond recovery.
Destroying the evidence. Textbook guilty behavior.
Completely. There's almost no innocent explanation for doing that, especially under these circumstances.
While all this was happening, investigators were also talking more to family, trying to understand the dynamic between Sam and Aileen. What did they learn?
Yeah, they interviewed Sam's son, Just Brammer, and Aileen's daughter, Nicole Shipper. They both described Sam and Aileen's relationship as, well, rocky.
How so?
Sam apparently had a short temper, and Aileen would get kicked out for little reasons, but interestingly, they also mentioned that Aileen wasn't always passive. Apparently, she had sometimes been physically aggressive towards Sam herself, saying she'd grabbed him by her neck times.
So a volatile relationship on both sides, perhaps, adds complexity, but doesn't negate the evidence against Sam.
Not at all. It just paints a picture of a troubled relationship. But the evidence trailed the lies, the CCTV, the money, the truck destruction. It was all pointing directly at Sam.
And then, inevitably, came the discovery everyone feared.
Tragically, yes. On February 26th, almost 2 weeks after she vanished, Aileen's body was found. It was underneath a bridge, actually just miles away from Sam's apartment.
Was she identifiable?
Her body was apparently unrecognizable due to decomposition and exposure, but crucially, the clothes she was wearing matched the outfit she had on the day she disappeared. So they knew it was Aileen.
What did the initial autopsy reveal? It wasn't immediately clear-cut, was it?
No, the initial findings were grim but puzzling. They found 8 blunt force impacts to her head and a fractured front tooth. Significant injuries, obviously, but the medical examiner initially ruled the cause of death as undetermined.
That must have been incredibly frustrating, given everything else they knew.
Hugely frustrating. You have this mountain of circumstantial evidence pointing to murder, but the forensics aren't giving you that final, definitive piece right away.
But they kept looking, didn't they? The forensic pathologist found something later.
They did. They continued the examination, and this was the breakthrough. They eventually discovered zipper marks on the neck of Aileen.
Zipper marks, what did that signify?
It signified that she was strangled to death, likely by Brammer, using something like the zipper on a jacket or clothing pulled tight against her neck. Those specific marks provided the concrete evidence of the mechanism of death strangulation. That was the final piece needed.
So with the cause of death confirmed and all the other evidence, what was the final outcome for Samuel Brammer?
On November 17th, 2023, Samuel Brammer was charged with second-degree murder, abuse of a corpse for dumping her body, and theft for taking the $1,200. He was ultimately convicted and sentenced to 65 years in prison.
Wow, what a journey this deep dive has taken us on. From that initial missing person report, the confusing stories, the love triangle theory.
Yeah, it really seemed tangled at first, but it shows how methodical police work, especially using tools like CCTV combined with forensic science, can cut through the confusion.
And crucially, it was Sam Brammer's own actions after Eileen disappeared that really sealed his fate, wasn't it?
Absolutely. His clear lies in the interviews were bad enough. But then you add the seen her alive slip, the disturbing comments to his granddaughter, that absolutely crazy high-speed chase, depositing the victim's cash, and then, meticulously destroying his truck.
It just built this overwhelming circumstantial case.
Exactly. It was a cascade of guilty actions. Each one chipped away any possibility of innocence. It's a powerful example of how sometimes what people do after a crime speaks far louder than any story they try to tell.
So maybe the final thought for you, our listener, is about that very point. In this age where we're bombarded with information, with stories, with claims, how crucial is it to look beyond the words?
Yeah, to really scrutinize the actions, follow those digital breadcrumbs like the CCTV trail. Because as this case vividly shows, sometimes the truth isn't in the alibi someone gives.
It's in the desperate things they do afterwards. The frantic attempts to cover tracks, the slips of the tongue, the sheer panic. Those actions can reveal the chilling truth far more effectively than any crafted lie ever could.